Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crash Zoom. I'm Sammie Purcell, Associate Editor with Rough Draft Atlanta, and as always, I'm here with indie filmmaker Aaron Strand, and we are both tired. I know I can say that. We had a lot of film festin this weekend, so other than that, how you doing?
Oh my God, I'm so exhausted.
Yeah, I'm very tired.
Oh man, yeah, we're on day 5 of the festival, of the Atlanta Film Festival here in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. It's been a lot of fun. Been a lot of late nights. Been a lot of late nights and then early mornings for me. I still gotta get my daughter to daycare, by 8, 8 at the latest. So, man, yeah, burning the candle at both ends. But it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun. We'll get into some of the movies we've been watching a little bit later, but before we do that, if this is your first episode of Crash Zoom, welcome. What Aaron and I like to do here is take a look at what's going on in the industry, in the film industry at a big picture level, and boil it down and try to figure out why that matters to the independent filmmaker and creator. And if you listen today and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube at Crash Zoom Podcast. And be sure to rate and review as well. That really helps us out. But other than that, let's dive in to the Atlanta Film Festival. So we always start this podcast off with what we've been watching this week. And obviously, we've been watching a lot of Atlanta Film Festival films. So Aaron, what have been some of your favorites?
Yeah, starting off, just opening night film, Color Book. First time I've seen it. I've been following this film for a long time. And holy shit, I love this movie. I mean, the movie really struck a chord with me. It on the one hand, as an artist, I was so blown away because everything about this movie goes against my instincts as a sort of a writer and director. David Fortune, who's the writer-director of this film, just did an incredible job. The world is so contained. It is so grounded in just normalcy and normal life. Nothing crazy happens in this movie, and that's part of its beauty and its incredible grounded charm. And it takes such a confident artist to make a script like that. And I'm so jealous of him. Honestly, I'm just amazed with David Fortune, who's an absolutely lovely person on top of everything else. But then at the same time, it's like I'm watching this film that feels like it was made by an alien, at least compared to my tastes. And yet I'm also watching it as a father where I relate so deeply to the character because it's essentially a story of fatherhood. And to have that simultaneous, this is something just totally antithetical to me and yet so close to me. I can't remember the last movie that made me feel like that. That felt both familiar and new and fresh, and I just loved every bit of it. I know you got to speak to David for an interview. What'd you think of Color Book?
I really, really liked Color Book, and like you said, David is just one of the easiest interviews I've ever had. He's so nice and thoughtful and very giving with his answers, which as an interviewer you always appreciate. I also want to shout out, I thought Will Catlett, who played the father, was just incredible. I adored his performance. I make a list of my favorite performances of the year, and he is currently on it in the lead actor category. So yeah, I really loved Color Book, and it's awesome because, and I talked to David about this, so many movies are filmed in Atlanta, obviously, and Atlanta stands in for another place. So it was nice to watch a movie that is actually set in Atlanta, and Atlanta plays such a large part of that movie, and that was just a nice change of pace. I really loved it.
Totally. Moving on from Color Book, though, I wanted to shout out some shorts because I've had the great pleasure of checking out some short blocks, usually rolling up to support friends of mine who I love and whose work I love. But I get exposed to all these sort of new, just stuff I've never heard of. That's one of the great joys of going and really putting in the time at a film festival. So a few films. There's a short film called Rat. Rat with an
I saw that one.
with an
Yeah.
exclamation point, which was absolutely fabulous. Which is about a young, like a gay writer influencer who tries to like shit post an artist for queer baiting, but then it like turns into this horror kind of slasher like thriller
Hmm.
thing when his like super fans come after the writer. And everything about it was really joyful, and that was so great to see it with an audience because like the whole audience was just enraptured and sort of like, oh no, like giving like big
Hmm.
reactions to the screen, and that was awesome. In that same block, there was a psychedelic cartoon called Jesus 2 that I thought was awesome. Like I generally do not like kind of like psychedelic, like out there, irreverent style comedy, but for some reason this one just worked for me. I loved it. Jesus 2 is hilarious. And then another short in that block was called Gender Reveal, which was about this like little this like thruple of I don't know, gender non-conforming individuals who get invited to one of their boss's gender reveal party, uh, which was like super funny, and I thought the lead in
Hmm.
that was just fabulous. Then moving over, another block I saw, which is called the No Ordinary Love block, which is all about sort of like out there sort of love stories, and I was there showing out for my girl Madison Hatfield with I Could Dom, which I've seen like lots of times, but I love it every time. But it
Hmm.
also got exposed to a couple of other movies. There was a movie called What You Left in the Ditch, which was a sort of erotic story about a wife whose husband has had a terrible deformity from a war. He comes home from the war with like his lips blown off, and then she basically like lusts after the checkout guy at her local grocery. Because he has full
Solid.
lips, and but like everything about like the lust, the longing, like everything about this film was like incredible. I loved it. And then there was an amazing documentary short in this block called "Sunset and the Mockingbird," which was about the final years of the legendary jazz pianist Junior Mance, who I've always been a fan of, but I didn't really know like this aspect of his story. It follows his final years, suffering from Alzheimer's. The music is like the only thing holding to him together, and really the main character is his manager turned wife, who absolutely is like fighting for his final years of life. He ultimately passed away in 2021, and she was there at the screening, and she just was like, I mean, her vulnerability, her openness, it was just
Hmm.
staggering, awe-inspiring, a beautiful short that I will never forget.
Nice. I'll have to check out those shorts. We stayed for some of the Funhouse one, the one that Rat played in, but we had to jet off. You know how film festivals are. You've got to like make
Oh
sure you
yeah.
get to screenings on time and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh
So we didn't
yeah.
catch the whole thing, but I love the ones I saw.
Nice.
I have a couple to plug. I saw my first Joel Petrikis film, which I believe you're a big fan of this man,
Yes.
Vulcanizadora, which I recently learned after looking into more of his work that this is like a sequel of sorts, which is kind of interesting. But I really liked it. It was dark, but kind of weirdly hopeful in a strange way, which I quite enjoyed. I thought it was really funny. I also want to shout out this movie I saw called Mongrels by Jerome Yu. I believe it's his first feature, which is like kind of insane to me. But it's about a Korean immigrant family in Canada who's moved to Canada in the 90s to help a small town cull this population of feral dogs. But obviously, they're like going through their own trials and tribulations as well. The mother has just passed away in this family. And I thought it was so lovely. It was one of those movies that kept like it just kept getting better as it went along. You kind of take each act from the point of view of one member of this family, and it ends with the young daughter who was just a wonderful child actress. I also want to shout out The Lost Wolves of Yellowstone from Thomas Winston, which is a documentary about the wolf restoration project in Yellowstone, which I didn't know a ton about, but they like filmed all of it basically in the 90s and then lost all this footage and then recently found all this footage. So they've got a ton of just like old footage of wolves in these giant pens because of the way like reintroducing animal species works. You have to like pen the wolves so they don't run back to Canada. Like it's this like very crazy long process. And it has a lot to do with a woman named Molly Beatty who was like just an amazing, incredible conservationist. You should go look her up and read more about her life. She was amazing. And then the last one I want to plug is a movie called Lockjaw from filmmaker called Sabrina Greco. I actually got to interview her today, so that'll be out later this week. It was a great conversation. But this movie is about a woman who gets in an accident. She gets a DUI, gets in like a horrible car accident that requires her jaw to be wired shut. And then the movie is then basically about like her first time kind of like going for a night on the town with her jaw wired shut. So it's like very hard for her to communicate. She's not a very likable person, I'd say, but she's got kind of some charm, and she just gets into some crazy antics involving a very weird magician, a couple boyfriends, normal stuff. But I thought it was a lot of fun. It was very like cringy and very tense, but very, very funny as well.
Nice. That's a good lineup.
Yeah, and we got more. We just got more to do this whole week.
yeah, barely, but not even halfway done. I'm glad we got a little breather today. Although I did show out for the Seed and Spark educational conference this morning, which was also very good.
Nice.
So
nice.
Yeah, I don't know when we're gonna sleep. It certainly won't be Wednesday night. That's.
What a segue.
Yeah. Not unintentional segue, but if you are listening to this episode tonight is the world premiere of my debut feature film, Withdrawal, which will be screening at the Plaza Theater at 9 p.m. That event is sold out. However, I believe that they have just announced that there will be an overflow screening upstairs. So if you show up to the theater, even if you if you don't have a ticket, you should be seated in the overflow theaters upstairs, where the film will also be screening. But if it's also too late at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, we also have an encore screening happening Sunday, May the 4th at 7 p.m. That'll be at the Terra Theater. Tickets are available for reservation and purchase now. So lots of opportunities to come out to see Withdrawal, and it will be super fun. And I hope to see you there.
Woo! I'll be there. I'm excited. So it's at 9 p.m.? I thought it was at 8 p.m. Did I write that down wrong?
So red carpet begins at 8. Red carpet reception begins at 8. Screening begins at 9.
Okay.
Late
cool.
night
Good
vibes. Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad I canceled my Thursday morning workout class.
I am happy on your behalf.
All right. So we've been film festing a lot, obviously. And, I went to Sundance earlier this year, humble brag. But when you're film festing, it's hard to know what to do. I just mentioned having to leave a screening early to make sure you get to screenings on time. And I've heard that you have some film festival tips for the people out there as we head into this next week.
Yeah, look, I love film festivals. I really, really do. But they are also a moment of extreme anxiety for many filmmakers. A moment of extreme, the word I like is crunchiness. You just feel crunchy about doing it because a lot of this work is either incredibly solitary, especially if you're a writer and director, or it's happening within sort of a small circle of friends, especially if you're an independent creator, and all of a sudden you are being asked to go out into this very large group of people who all are, for the most part, feeling the exact same way. And the result is a little bit of social anxiety. And I have been talking to many people over the last 4 or 5 days, friends of mine, who have expressed this social anxiety to some degree or another. And I am right there with them. I feel the social anxiety too. But I've been going to film festivals for a while. I really only started making a committed in earnest effort in during a crazy time, which was in 2020, to what film festivals were actually happening in person, because that's really when my first piece of narrative fiction was out on the festival circuit. But I have definitely I have a little top 5 here, Aaron's top 5 festival tips, just little things that I try to remind myself, okay, to keep me going through the long days of rubbing elbows and exchanging Instagram handles. Okay, so number 5, you got to eat, okay? Grab lunch when you can. This is a perfect time to sneak some food into a theater. If you go all day without eating lunch, you have a much higher likelihood of getting sick. Don't be that guy. You cannot survive on popcorn. Get your lunch, people. It's very, very important. Okay, number 4, and this is absolutely critical, wear layers. Okay. Not only does it look better in photos, 9 times out of 10, but you're going to move from, here we are in Atlanta. It's beautiful out, but it's still like 85 degrees during the day. You're going to move from 85-degree heat, get in a theater, and then get blasted with air conditioning for 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. And if you're not eating, and that temperature change is happening, again, higher likelihood of getting sick. I feel like there's been 2 screenings where I have been sitting next to the one person in the entire theater who's like sneezing every 5 minutes. And all I could think is like, oh my God, if you get me sick before my movie premiere, I'm going to fucking kill you.
Flip out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna flip the table. Yeah, the Terra in particular was cold. I thought the plaza on Friday was kind of hot, honestly. I was sweating. The Terra has been like really cold, very, very chilly. So bring your jackets, people.
Yes, layers are critical. Number 3, and this kind of applies, but this is really suit up and show up, okay? Once you've picked your layers, fucking bring them and show up to the theater. There is so many incentives, especially if you have like an awkward break in the middle of the day, for you to just call it a day. Look, I already went out there. I saw this shorts block. I'm a little tired. Yes, this is on my schedule. Or maybe like, oh, I don't want to drag myself to the 1 p.m. film when I know I'm going to be back at the 8 p.m. film. This is precious time. This is really, really precious time. When I was younger in particular, and look, like I still struggle with this. This is why it's on my top 5 list, because I have to tell this to myself in the mirror every morning. But particularly when I was younger, I wanted to be very selective about my time and what I showed up to, and sort of was just very self-centered, honestly, in sort of how I approached these type of things. And it was like sort of all about me and how they reflected about me. This is a time to get out of yourself. It's not about you. It's about celebrating the work of others. It's about showing up the work of others, and you will miss all of those opportunities to enjoy that work, to connect with other filmmakers who are in a roughly same sort of level of their career trajectory as you are, if you don't suit up and show up. So you got to show up. That leads to the next point, number 2, which is show up to and show love to everyone's work that you see. Okay? There are people that come to film festivals and they are like out there to be letterbox trolls. And there are people out there who lead with their snobbery. And I would just say, like, this especially if you're an artist in that position, like we have to look in the mirror. I think for all artists, our taste outpaces our talent for the most part. And that is a good thing. It's the inherent tension between our taste and our talent abilities that makes us need to make the next thing, because it's like my taste has already advanced beyond my abilities, and now I have to put my abilities into action in order to catch up my taste. But if you lead only with your taste and sort of look down upon others, it's a really bad look. It definitely isolates you. It keeps you separated from the group, as opposed to, because it's really a way of protecting yourself and your ego, and it doesn't allow you to just be a filmmaker among filmmakers. So I think it's really an opportunity to look in the mirror, get over yourself, get over the fear of being judged yourself. Because 9 times out of 10, if you see something that you don't like on screen, it's because you spot it, you got it. Like you are seeing your own mistakes, your own things that make you uncomfortable about yourself reflected back to you, and that's what makes you uncomfortable, but you interpret it as judgment upon others. So try to get over all that and show love, because these other people have worked really hard. It's their time for celebration, and you got to show up and celebrate them in the same way that you hope people show up and celebrate you. And if you can get over that ego part of yourself, you will not only have your mind opened to an entirely new world of storytelling and art forms, but you'll also make friendships and relationships and connections that will have real meaning behind them. And it's less of a sort of transactional bullshit way of approaching the world. And that leads to number 1. Once you've gotten over your ego and it's time to go up to somebody and say, hey, I saw your film, amazing job. I loved this part of it. just, you got to embrace the corny awkwardness. You know, I have talked to so many people over the last 5 days. It has been a joy. I genuinely love it. I have also stuck my foot in my mouth like probably like 7 times and said like something stupid, got someone's name wrong, said something awkward. God, I walked into a conversation the other day and people were talking about the name of the Terra Theater here in Georgia. And they were like, "Oh, Terra, I think it's like named after some Greek goddess." And I was like, "Oh no, it's named after the plantation in Gone with the Wind."
Yep.
And that was like a solid conversation killer. Like, that is not what anyone wanted to think about at that time.
Well,
yeah, and
it's the truth.
Yep, it's the truth. But you know what? I just kind of like backed my way out of that one. Wasn't my finest hour, even though it was 100% correct. And you know what? But that is just part of the deal. And you just got to embrace that awkward corniness. This is the time to learn how to be a face-forward artist. And as I just, was just reiterated during the Seed and Spark crowdfunding sort of self-distribution playbook event that was earlier today between Emily Best over at Seed and Spark and Kinema. You need to be face forward in this current art market. You've got to learn how to get out there. You've got to learn how to talk to other people, and you've got to be comfortable enough with yourself to do that. And being comfortable enough with yourself involves, for me, taking myself not so seriously and embracing that corny awkwardness. So that's all I got. Those are my 5 film festival tips. What do you think, Sammie?
Amazing. Yeah, I think they're great. I need to be better at talking to people at these things. I am a journalist. I do this for a living, but I famously hate talking to people, which I feel like is kind of actually a little bit of a common occurrence, at least among some journalists that I know. A lot of us are weirdly introverts. So I get the awkwardness, but yeah, I need to be better about putting myself out there, I think, in big social situations,
I think that the weird thing about film festivals is that, 99% of the people there, journalist or filmmaker or anyone, everyone is like incredibly socially awkward. Like, this is not, despite people from the outside thinking that this is some sort of like cool, effete, rarefied space of coolness, it is actually like the corniest, most awkward group of fucks like you can imagine.
Right. I feel like people assume like journalists are like, "Oh, well, you're extroverted." Like you it's like it's not extroverting. It's like it's curiosity, but also like interviewing people is the most awkward thing in the world. Like, you just sit down and you're like, "So, tell me about blah 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 blah." Like, it's not a normal way to have a conversation.
Right. And if anything, it's a testament to your awkwardness, because you're only conversing and connecting with the people that you want to connect to because you're genuinely interested in what they do, but within a sort of like curated workspace. One of the worst things about for me, or one of the biggest struggles is that I had, is that I worked in live events for so long that it took me 10 years to learn how to go to live events without having a job to do, because that was like my reason for being there. And I would always default back to like, well, I've got to go like move this chair or whatever as a way to get out of conversations and stuff. And so as just a normal person who wasn't working the event, I would get so consumed with fear and social anxiety about getting trapped in a conversation I couldn't leave or whatever that I like wouldn't do it. And like, that's fucking stupid. You just got to take that leap, man. Just got to take that leap. Tell them about the plantation and Gone with the Wind. You know what? People got to know.
Well, let me tell you about something else that's depressing. Let's move on to our first item for the week. Talk about segues. This article...
Sammie, you can't always call out your segues. Just make the segue.
Sure I can. It's like, do whatever I want.
You want a golf clap for every segue. That was a great segue, by the way.
I do. I actually do,
Right.
I crave... what's the word? Crave... Approval. There we go. Yeah. So this is from The Wrap. It's from Brian Lowry and Sean Birch, are the writers. This is serious business, actually.
Okay, sorry. Let me get... Yeah.
So... This from The Wrap. The article is entitled "CBS News in Turmoil Over, quote, Perfect Storm of 60 Minutes and Redstone, as in Cherry, Pressure to Settle with Trump." So this is, when I put this in here, I was like, it's a little tangential to like, we usually discuss like movies, but it involves big industry players. It's incredibly important, at least I think, to free speech, free press, etc., which is something that we do talk a lot about, at least free speech wise, on this podcast. So to jump into it, you might have heard this. It happened, I believe, last week, but longtime 60 Minutes executive producer Bill Owens recently left 60 Minutes, basically citing his ability to make independent decisions at CBS as CBS and parent company Paramount battle out a $20 billion lawsuit with Donald Trump. So basically saying he no longer has the ability to make independent decisions. A little background. So that lawsuit that we're talking about, Trump is claiming that 60 Minutes deceitfully edited an interview with Kamala Harris to give her an edge in the previous election. And he's been, railing against CBS News coverage over him basically ever since. Also important to note that merger mentioned in the above. So Paramount Global is in the middle of a long process trying to merge with Skydance Media. Donald Trump, like I said, has continued to rail against CBS and has basically called upon the FCC to punish the network, that they review mergers, the FCC. So they'll have the final say over that. So this has basically turned into sort of a long free speech, freedom of the press issue. Sherry Redstone, who's the head of Paramount, it's reported that she would really, really like to settle, which, a lot of Paramount or a lot of CBS 60 Minutes people believe they did nothing wrong, which I am of that opinion. I'll say right here. But yeah, that's basically what's going on. And before we get into this, I also wanted to call out that yesterday, Scott Pelley, who is on 60 Minutes, rebuked Paramount on the air and praised Bill Owens. So, quote, he said, quote, Bill felt he lost the independence that honest journalism requires, end quote, which is something that Bill Owens has been kind of saying as he's gone on this resignation tour, as it were. And then he also said, quote, in resigning, Bill proved one thing: he was the right person to lead 60 Minutes all along, end quote. So I guess to start off, what do you think about Bill Owens' decision to leave 60 Minutes?
Well, it's a tragedy for news, for independent freedom of the press. It's my understanding that 60 Minutes was also being pressured around their coverage of Palestine by particularly Sherry Redstone, who is a strong and vocal supporter of Israel and has basically sort of made that her entire life's mission around supporting Israel. And I think that it is terrible. I think that it is also incredibly indicative of the of the waning power of mass news, of broadcast news, certainly cable news as a subsidiary, and of sort of centralized voices around information distribution. Trump smells blood in the water. I mean, he's done this. So he's done this not just to CBS. He started off with Simon and Schuster in suing them over some quotes of his that were released in a book that they published. He then went after the Des Moines Herald, or like the Des Moines, Iowa newspaper. The Des Moines Register. Yes, he sued the Des Moines Register over a poll that they published in their newspaper after when they technically weren't supposed to release some sort of opinion journalism. He then, of course, sued ABC News, i.e. Disney, over George Stephanopoulos' slip of a tongue by calling him a rapist. And Trump said, "How dare you, sir? I am not a rapist. I am simply convicted of sexual assault in the state of New York," according to the state of New York. And Bob Iger paid him $15 million to settle. But this is Trump's thing, right? Like he smells blood in the water. This is just a money-making vehicle for him. And the fact that it allows him to attack his enemies and then also fire up his base are sort of secondary benefits. He has everything to gain and essentially nothing to lose by throwing frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit at people. From everyone that I listen to, everything that I read, the lawsuit against 60 Minutes is absolutely bullshit. The editing of the Kamala Harris interview was completely within standard news practices. It was nothing nefarious. This is a total nothing burger, and I think that a majority of people know that, and if it went to court, it would that would be proven. However, it would be a lengthy, long process, and because this Sherry Redstone and David Ellison, through nepo baby son of Oracle founder Larry Ellison, because they want to get this merger through, Trump sees it as an opportunity to extort and
Mhm.
essentially create a pathway through which people can launder money to the Trump organization. The corruption that's taking place in this country is absolutely incredible between these sort of lawsuits as a means to get payment, and then combine that with this Trump coin insanity that Donald Trump is,
Mhm.
as a sitting president, launched a meme coin that anybody could pay money into. I mean, what is stopping the Chinese from secretly depositing millions upon millions of dollars in Trump coin in exchange for favorable policy turns that is against the interest of America? I mean, it's just absolutely, it's just so crazy. And this is the same person that made it a 365-day news cycle about Hunter Biden sitting on some stupid board of Ukrainian energy company and claiming this to be the peak of corruption. It's just insane. Anyway, none of this would be happening if the centralized role of legacy media wasn't under such a threat due to the changing underlying in communication environment that we now live in. But it is, the sharks smell blood and they're going after the kill.
Right. I think one of the everything you said is equally upsetting to me in a lot of ways, but one of the things that sort of kind of upsets me a lot is there's a quote in this rap article where I believe, when was this published? It was published on April 23rd, and they're essentially talking about Jake Tapper, so CNN's coverage of Bill Owens leaving. And Tapper quotes an anonymous source at CBS that basically says Owens wouldn't bend to demands that CBS apologize to the president for its interview with Harris, which, like, the idea that a news organization would be required to apologize for, like, running and editing an interview with an opposing candidate is ridiculous. Like, basically doing their job. And to, like, obviously this is like from like anonymous source, like, et cetera, but like just putting that idea out into the world, like, makes me insane. Like, in what world would you apologize for something like that? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah,
know,
it
this whole
is.
thing, like,
I mean, it's this.
ah, this whole thing makes me crazy.
Yeah, it's just like it's. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the Russia playbook, the Turkey playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Hungary obviously is like often cited as a source of a once democratic country that has descended into authoritarianism through these sorts of threats, and frankly, I think it's a reason why. It's not even like this story and the Trump coin story are not, the number one talking point across America, is because other news organizations are afraid. This
Mm-hmm.
these types of threats and create an environment of fear that push people into silence, and but like they have the leverage. And I think you
Mm-hmm.
said FCC. It's actually FTC that is deciding mergers and
Oh, sorry
acquisitions.
about that.
FCC is deciding the broadcast license. So the FCC is also involved within the decision making process along with these
Yeah.
mergers. But if it's almost as if, like, look, like Trump gave all the signals that if you elect me, this is going to be a new era of mergers and acquisitions, right? We saw David Zaslav foaming at the mouth. Oh my God, I just, whoever comes into the office next, I just want them to be pro merger. And this Skydance, David Ellison, Skydance Paramount merger was done in advance of the Trump presidency being like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
like the cash is going to be flowing. And the fact that he then used that opportunity to, and Sherry Redstone and Larry Ellison are like outspoken Trump supporters.
Mm-hmm.
He's eating his own children here, and extracting from them not only a tremendous amount of public embarrassment, but whatever is going to be a payout. So the deadline just got pushed 90 days, I believe, into July. I have no doubt that we will get a news item that Sherry Redstone has agreed to pay a settlement on this lawsuit. I expect it to be much higher than the ABC settlement, which was $15 million, which is a ton of money, but also in the grand scheme of things, like, not that much money to sort of some of these mega
Mm-hmm.
corporations. I would set the over under at 60 million. of terms of settlement payment, and then the merger will be able to go through, and all the rich people will walk away happy, but we as the citizens of this country will walk away with a much tarnished source of information.
Right. And I mean, Bill Owens, I feel like everything that I've kind of read dissecting his decision and his comments and stuff is basically like he felt he had no choice and thought that this would like show people how dire things were. But I don't know if it's really going to have much of an effect, at least not at the upper level, you know?
Yeah.
Moving on to something not quite as depressing, but still like lightly depressing, maybe, and interesting in terms of data journalism. I love a good data journalism piece, so I was excited when this popped up. It's from The Ringer. It's from Ben Lindbergh and Rob Arthur, and it's titled "Behind the Camera: Movies Are Still #So White." So we all remember #Oscars So White. I believe that was in 2015, and it came about because all 20 acting nominees for the Oscars that year were white. The hashtag took off. And The Ringer has taken it upon themselves 10 years later to basically try and get some data to see not only how diversity is faring in front of the camera, but mostly how it's faring behind the camera. And we can get into the methodology because they do that thing I love in data journalism pieces where they like go through their method, they talk to a bunch of experts to sort of discuss the like pitfalls of the method, where they could have done better, but like what are the constraints, what are the advantages, et cetera, which I thought was pretty interesting. I love reading how like data is broken down and how people go about compiling that stuff. But their findings basically, in a nutshell, found that casts have long been more diverse. Obviously, casts have long been more diverse than less public-facing crews, though casts are also far from representative of the population at large. But lately, the two groups' proportion of people of color have further diverged. So basically, while casting and crew representation, like people POC, is they're both moving upwards, cast, so the front facing people, is moving upwards at a higher rate. So I guess before we dive into this quite lengthy piece of journalism, were you surprised by any of this? What are your sort of general thoughts?
No, I wasn't surprised by this, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's comparing. You know, they have the sort of intro graph is one where you're looking
Mm-hmm.
at the percentage of people of Americans who are non-white, going from 1980 to 2025. And you see this steady increase of the non-white population within the country, and it's tracking
Mm-hmm.
the that population within casts and in crews, like you said. And while everything is moving up and toward the right, so progress is being made. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
overall good. The crews definitely lagged behind the casting, and the argument was sort of like in response to the Oscars So White campaign, progress has been made sort of in front of camera, but that's actually a relatively small percentage of the people who actually make movies happen, and this much larger
Mm-hmm.
population base is still underrepresented in terms of sort of the diversity of this country. It wasn't entirely surprising, and this is mostly just based on historical precedent. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as many of you know, I am a huge fan of Melvin Van Peebles, the Black independent filmmaker who made the Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song completely independently and outside of any studio system in 1970, back when if you made a movie, a feature film outside of union constraints, the unions could show up at your set, destroy your cameras, and punch you in the face. And that is how unions operated within the greater Los Angeles area, really from the 1920s up until the early 70s. And these unions were also incredibly segregated. There was like less than 1% non-white representation in these unions, and the unions completely controlled what got made in Hollywood. So if you're just thinking that like that was the situation in 1970, that's only two full generations removed from where we are now as far as like people coming up and like getting into this business. And if your family has no connection to the business, if you don't see someone who looks like you in the business, it's really hard to sort of blaze those trails. And oftentimes you end up sort of, like segregation continues in a sort of self-protective way. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't end up with a sort of integrated workforce. So it's not surprising. It's obviously very unfortunate and something that, at the entire industry should continue to make improvements on, but I was not surprised by the results.
Yeah, me neither. And it really like kind of confirmed for me something I've been thinking about for a long time, sort of like what the issues with representation by itself are. Like, obviously, it's great to see yourself represented on screen. It offers more opportunities for performers of color, and that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, I think without any other sort of like meaningful strides made, it can be pretty superficial. And there was a really interesting example that really struck me in here where they were sort of talking about how having kind of a more diverse crew can help from a story making process and just like help make things better. And the example was about Selma. So Selma is obviously directed by Ava DuVernay, and the cinematographer on that movie was a guy named Bradford Young. And this piece of the article was just about how like the way that Black people are lit and like Black skin is lit in that movie is quite stirring, and they have someone sort of talk about it. And this is something that I've noticed it myself, but I see Black critics in particular talking about this all the time, how often the way like Black people are lit in movies is just abysmal. Like, it's so dark and kind of ugly because people like don't know how to do it because they're not used to it, right? And I thought that was like a pretty great example of how, having more diversity behind the camera can also help it in front of the camera.
Yeah, I mean, I think it
Yeah.
even translates. I mean, I'm just speaking from personal experience because, like, ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
like, as two white people on a podcast, like running
Right.
through the statistics, like, I don't really know how much we have to add to the conversation outside of my personal experience. And all I know is that when it came time to try to like cast the crew of Withdrawal, I again I went back to Melvin Van Peebles, who wrote in who specifically in 1970, when he was building out the crew for Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, said, "I want this crew to look like America," and he actively tried to
Mm-hmm.
make the most diverse crew that he could find that had basically like every race he could think of, which is just way ahead of his time sort of in 1970 about having that approach, because it wasn't like he could have very easily been like, I want this to be an all black cast and crew and like fuck everyone else. No, he said, I
Mm-hmm.
want this to look like America. And I tried to bring to the best of my abilities that same perspective to Withdrawal. What, did we do an absolute perfect job? No, but like it certainly wasn't like, pork sausage everywhere, if you know what I'm saying. Uh is the other white
Wow.
meat. So anyway, and I think that overall, like, putting people with very different backgrounds like into a working environment together is just, not only is it there's something moral about doing it, and you are trying to put into action sort of your beliefs, but it's just more fun. Like, people just like
Mm-hmm.
like, even if it doesn't lead to sort of like a concrete creative decision, such as the way that you light darker skin, having people with different backgrounds is just more enjoyable. Like, in a work environment, people have
Right.
like different stories, and you get to like yeah, compare and contrast, and that I believe that has to trickle down like into the art making. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, I do think that this comes down to like at least on the individual level, right? And like, that's the mission of this podcast, is to translate, big
Mm-hmm.
stories into individual levels. That if you're an independent filmmaker, like, you have, you have control over this. Like,
Yeah.
exercise it and do the best that you can. And like, will you get it perfect, or probably not? Like, I don't even know exactly what perfect looks like. But
Mm-hmm.
like, you can certainly put your actions where your mouth is.
For sure. And I'm also really glad that a study like this, that is sort of this large, it goes all the way back to 1980, and it encompasses about 98,000 people. So they took a lot of data here. I'm glad it exists because they kind of go through their method and basically talk about how like there is not a ton of this type of data out there. So they had to like basically create this entire like do kind of a machine learning like data scraping of the internet, which posed some problems, including, which I thought was pretty interesting, like basically having a machine sort of determine each person's perceived race, which they kind of talk about the limitations of that as well. This is
Yeah.
just me kind of nerding out about how data works, but I think it's really interesting. So they have one expert kind of talk about how like socially, quote, socially observed race. So not necessarily what you identify as, but how other people sort of observe you. Like on the one hand, that mimics what happens in real life, right? Like I might not necessarily know exactly what race someone is, but like because you see them, you create, like you have an idea in your mind. And so that's like one good thing about this. But also there's another expert who talks about like there are gray areas with assigning race to people and there are limits to machine learning. So like how do you kind of handle that in your data scraping as well, which I don't have much more to say about that. I think this is a very good example of like data journalism, which is something I've always wished I could be better at. I did a lot of it in grad school, but it's very, very time consuming. So shout out to these guys.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
One last two last points from me. Number one, one of the things that they really highlighted is that obviously the largest growing non-white demographic in the United States are the Latinx, Hispanic, Central South American population, and that is the slowest growing population within crew representation. That should be an obvious point to me. And as soon as I started reading the reading the article, I was like, oh, I bet the Latinx population is going to be not as high, just because I haven't seen as many people within like the crew setting from that background. But it did also bring into relief a lot of the like Latinx filmmaker groups that are here active in Atlanta. I had always sort of taken them for granted as sort of like, yeah, that's awesome that you're doing that, but like I didn't connect it to sort of like a concrete need of like, oh, this is the fastest growing population group within this country, and like there does need to be sort of advocacy and support in order for folks to be able to enter into this industry. The last thing that I just wanted to say is that like the one statistic that is not represented within this study, and it's a little hard to integrate into the data, which is that like this is not like filmmaking is not like an open meritocracy job. Like
Right.
this is like a vanity career, that like 1% of people who engage with can like actually support themselves doing. And that is a skewed for privilege, a skewed for nepotism, a skewed for wealthy background kind of factor that is going to greatly influence this conversation. And I did sort of bristle at sometimes when like the implied language within the study was as if there is a sort of a colluding elite that is like enforcing this sort of social structure, as opposed to sort of broader society structures and structures of the nature of the industry itself, in the fact that like very few people can actually support themselves doing this work, that is inevitably like influencing the way these statistics are coming about. Did that cross your mind at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think like there are some kind of comments in here about sort of, or parts in this article sort of about like, Hollywood is like a money-making endeavor, but I definitely thought about sort of like they're dealing with a kind of a limited population in the first place, right? Like what you said, like the people who are able to like make it to this place in the first place is a very limited segment of our population. But you're right. I'm not sure how you would sort of integrate those statistics like into the data that they've already gotten. I wish I knew. I'm telling you, I really wish that I was better at this stuff. I think it's like really fascinating, but I assume it would be like difficult to like integrate those different pots into it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm
But
glad
it definitely did cross my mind, but
I got to be honest, Sammie, I'm glad you find this fascinating. I love a statistic, but this article was chock full of statistics, and I would have liked a little summary, But
I thought that I like love stuff like this. I just think like I think it's a good example of like making your own method, which is like so hard to do when the data doesn't like really exist as a whole. So I commend them for trying to make it work and trying to do the best they can,
What I think would be really cool is that like if we got a little bit more of this sort, I do think that more data analytics towards sort of not that studying population movements has ever been a soft science, but certainly sort of humanities type discussions around race and representation have generally like existed within sort of like the soft sciences. And I think the more data we have about them is better. But that the more data we have then also creates sort of those interesting conversations where like data versus sort of like broader conversations that we get to have like within the sports context all the time of like people will always throw analytics to describe what's happening in a sporting event, but like does that really capture the whole story? And I find that those tensions always to be like the most interesting, but you need the data in order to have those conversations. So I'm happy that they did it. But maybe next time you could put it in ChatGPT.
No, we can. All right, you know what? Don't make me do that, please.
I'm on my OpenAI boycott. I haven't relapsed for the record.
Good, I'm proud.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Talking about some jobs. We're talking about jobs. So this is from Ankler. It's from Natalie Jarvie. It's called, the title kind of cracks me up. Just the beginning. Jobs! ! Talent ditches Hollywood for the creator economy. So over the past few weeks, Ankler has been doing some kind of reporting kind of on jobs in Hollywood. Spoiler alert, it doesn't look great. It's kind of hard to get hired right now. But in this article, Natalie Jarvie sort of comparing that dearth of jobs, is that right? The right word? Dearth?
Yeah.
To the kind of plethora in the creator economy. So at the beginning of this article, she talks about how YouTube jobs currently list more than 400 open positions, which is wild. And then it talks about a couple of other sort of creator-based companies that have a ton of jobs available right now. There's a lot of jobs available in that space. And this article basically the column goes on to basically interview people who have sort of worked in the kind of traditional Hollywood space and made this leap kind of over to the creator economy, their reasons for doing, why, etc. So I guess I'll just start there and then we can kind of dive into it. But what did you think about this piece?
Again, not surprising that there are more opportunities in the like growth sector of the entertainment industry than the traditional sector of the entertainment industry. One is experiencing structural collapse. One is experiencing exponential growth. We've talked many times that while the box office returns or whatever other sort of metric, linear cable subscription and advertising numbers are consistently going down, the overall entertainment spend on a global level is increasing year over year. Where is that money going? That money is going into sort of user-generated content, this sort of content creator economy that doesn't seem to be anywhere near hitting its ceiling as of right now. So it's no surprise there, but it does represent a staggering shift that has finally come for the filmmaking industry, which is the shift that has happened across many sectors of our economy, which is for a long time, the socialist-minded, communist-minded kind of folks have railed against this idea of blue-collar work, this idea of showing up to a job that doesn't care about you and you're plugged into this role that dehumanizes you, right? Doesn't give you the means of your own production. And what is so interesting is that we have now shifted into a world of precarious work, which is actually a far more nefarious capitalist system. The capital with the aid of technology has shifted us into a world where we are now given the means of our own production as creators or participants within the creator economy. So we technically should be living in the socialist utopia. And yet, within this system, we are actually experiencing this new form of precarious work where we have no guarantees in terms of pension, in terms of even steady paycheck. This is the truth of the gig economy. And unfortunately, for many of these content creators and sort of people looking to jump into the content creator workforce, not like as like you're going to be face forward on TikTok, but even in a support role as an editor or videographer or production manager, anything sort of for one of these characters or for one of these businesses, you are still jumping into the pool of precarious work where your paycheck is absolutely dependent upon the virality of whatever you made previously.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very scary place to be in. It's a place where it's very, very hard to plan for a future because you have no guarantees in your paycheck. And because everything moves so fast and trends and forces move so fast on the internet, it's very hard to find stability. And you certainly won't find the sort of steady paychecks that you once found within the traditional media world. So this is a shift to precarious work. Precarious work is the absolute apotheosis of capital dehumanizing, of absolute apotheosis of the dehumanizing power of capital. This is the brave new world that we live in, and I, for one, am absolutely terrified.
Yeah, it is terrifying. There is sort of a section here towards the end. It sort of reminded me a little bit of when we talked to Madison Hatfield about her work on mini dramas, which I believe is dropping next week.
Yes.
Super exciting. You guys can listen to that. But the part that sort of reminded me of that was like, there's a lot of sort of talk kind of towards the end of this about like doing this kind of in the short term to make long-term gains. Like not like, I guess like holding yourself above this quote unquote, just like in order to make money while you're sort of like reaching towards these more long-term goals. And that sort of reminded me of when we chatted with her. But you are correct. It is like, these are not union jobs. The pay is not as good. Like you're not getting healthcare through the majority of these, as I understand it. So it is a much more precarious and sort of like dangerous place to be as far as work goes.
Yeah, this is like you signing up to be an Uber driver in 2015. Like,
yeah,
are you jumping into the future of come be in control of your own destiny and join the future of transportation? I mean, like,
yeah, it is interesting. You know, we've been talking about like, and obviously LA is still like a movie city, but you know, we've been talking about how like production has like gone down recently in LA and decreased, but LA is like absolutely 100% creator, social media influencer central. Like just like by my own kind of like the reality shows that I watch, when they're done, the majority of these people immediately move to LA. Like that's 100% where you go. It's like what Hollywood was when it first started, like 100 years ago. You know, you move to LA because you're trying to be a social media influencer, not because you're trying to be an actor. Although people do still do that, but I find that kind of shift really fascinating as well.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if I don't know if it's like it's like that saves LA, but like
I don't know, but it's crazy because it's like, I guess you can, I mean, these people do make a lot of money off of Instagram and TikTok, but it's such a slippery slope. Like one thing goes wrong and it's done, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. Quick little update on Cannes, just to move away from that into something a little more fun. So the Cannes Film Festival, we talked about that last week, and they've added several new titles to the official selection. We kind of thought they would. Those titles include Lynn Ramsey's Die My Love, thank God, thriller starring Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson. We've also got Kristen Stewart's The Chronology of Water, which I'm not sure, is that her feature debut? I think it is. I believe it is. So exciting stuff. And then we've got Ethan Cohen's Honey Don't in the Midnight section. I love the title of that. Honey Don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then got a couple of other movies, or not a couple, several other movies that have been added to the lineup as well. So just wanted to give a wee little update there on Cannes, on our French faves.
God, how scary is it to name your movie Honey Don't, knowing that like if it sucks, like every critic is gonna be like, if only Ethan listened to the title of his own movie.
Oh my God. Okay, one person is allowed to do that, so everyone just has to watch out, and then no one else can do it. That's my rule. Yeah. No one else can do it. Yeah. No honeydew either. Let's lay off the honey. Like, you know,
yes.
Let's just lay off of the honey puns, please. I'm begging all of us.
Oh God. I hope it's good.
I'll do it too.
Well, yeah, this is all exciting. Again, not surprising. There is a bunch of other films that were also added to the list. Most were from foreign directors that I was not familiar with, so we did not get to everything. But they added like 12 titles to the.
Yeah, something like that. So there's a lot going on.
Wild.
This might
Wild.
be, do you think this is it? Do you think there are any other additions coming our way?
You never know. There might be a little.
Terrence Malick,
Yeah.
perchance?
I don't think Terrence is finishing in time. Sad to say.
No.
There was a little blurb in this article, and this sounded like pure publicist spin, which is about Lynn Ramsey screening Die My Love like after the announcement of the Cannes lineup. I mean, like, that was like a few weeks ago. Like, you really couldn't get like a rough cut in like before the deadline. Like, what? Like,
Right. Yeah, it's variety in the article that we're using, so kind of par for the course. But
yeah.
exciting stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
interested to see how K-Stew's movie is, Also, my Twilight brain, K-Stew and our Pats united once again. Wow.
On the corset.
Proud of those crazy kids. They're doing so well, both of them.
Well, yes. I can hardly contain my excitement.
I'm excited. All right. So moving on to something I'm sure you're super excited about, Aaron. It's our studio episode 2 recap. This one, very short little up. What did you think about this one? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed it more than the first.
I did too.
A lot less exposition. They obviously felt a huge responsibility to sort of like set up the world with a lot of expository on-the-nose dialogue in episode 1. This one was like we were much more in the action. And of course, it featured the lovely Sarah Polley. Love Sarah Polley. Have you seen her documentary, Stories We Tell?
I have not. I am a little... my Sarah Polley filmography is not as full as I would like it to be, but I'm learning, and I'm gonna watch, but I haven't seen it.
highly recommend this film. I think you would really like it. I won't give away any spoilers. This goes for everybody. Sarah Polley's Stories We Tell is an absolute gem of a movie. I really love this film.
Oh, I'll check it out. Adding it to the watch list. I like this episode a lot more. I laughed a lot. I think watching this show, like, it just felt more like a comedy to me, and not like kind of in the silly way that the sort of like Kool-Aid thing did in the first episode. Like, it just felt like sort of genuinely funny. Speaking of Sarah Polley, I thought she was really funny. Like, she seemed really game, and I thought that was great. Greta Lee was also in this episode as the star of Sarah Polley's movie. Speaking of which, I'm wondering if it's sort of going to be a running joke. Like, what in the world was that movie about? Like, I could not tell at all. So I guess to sort of set this up, Seth Rogen's character, who's the head of the studio, like, wants to be present for the shooting of this great one-er take at Sarah Polley's new movie. And it's like their last shot of the film. Like, they got to get it in one take. The sun's going down. Greta Lee has to leave for some reason. So this is like the last chance that they have. And no one really wants him there. Like, Sarah Polley doesn't want him there. Producers don't want him there. Actors don't want him there. No one wants him there. And he kind of just fucks everything up, basically. But I was so confused as to what is this film that Sarah Polley is making? It didn't feel like a Sarah Polley film to me, which had to be on purpose. So I found that pretty humorous.
Yeah, that was funny. I do. So they're shooting this oneer, and Seth Rogen can't help himself but like keep making suggestions, and then his suggestions ruin the timing, and then and this comedy of errors that all descends from that. I have to be honest though, and like, this is episode 2, and I like this a lot better than episode 1.
Yeah,
I don't like Seth Rogen as an actor.
I
find him to be.
Have you seen The Fabelmans?
I don't like The Fabelmans. We've talked about this.
Well, that's crazy.
I don't like The Fabelmans.
Take, but wow.
Well, anyway, this is about Seth Rogen, not The Fabelmans. I'm going to keep us on track, as I am wont to do. But I find him. I just don't believe him. I don't buy it. I think he's kind of sloppy as a comedian. I wish that it was sharper, because I just don't believe his desperate earnestness of loving the movies, but then like it's his very earnest awkwardness that then creates all these problems. I couldn't help but imagining, even at this age and at this stage of his career, of how much more I would like a Jason Alexander within this role. I mean, this is a very sort of George Costanza like storyline in terms of like you're trying to do the right thing, but you keep messing up along the way, and the more you mess up, the more awkward it gets. And it's not even like a testament to like his legacy from that character or whatever, but Jason Alexander just has such a sharpness to his comedy that was so honed by all of his work on the stage. And I think that sharpness would really translate into the crispness of the timing of this show. Seth Rogen is not sharp. He's not crisp. He's a stoner to his core. And so everything, it just ends up in this sort of muddled kind of like soup of action. And it's just not my taste.
I see what you're saying. And I think I see what you're saying. I don't know if it would work for like Jason Alexander. I think for what they're trying to do with this show, he's like way too unlikable. Like I just don't, because I think what they're trying to do is still, it's like a Michael Scott thing, right? Like as much as he like fucks shit up, you still like him at the end of the day. Like that's what they're sort of trying to achieve, I think.
Perfect example. Steve Carell would
and
also
so,
and again, like Steve Carell, I'm not saying like I think this would be better with Steve Carell, but an actor with Steve Carell's crisp, sharp sense of changes of action and just his sort of instincts as an actor, I think that I would want to see that within this performance. And just Seth Rogen just has never had that for me.
Yeah, I see that. I do believe his earnestness. Like I've always weirdly found him very earnest, but like I find myself like charmed by his sort of bumbling, like, I'm just here, like the laugh, all that stuff. But I see what you're saying. It would be interesting to sort of like see something a little crisper in the performance. But I'm charmed by Seth Rogen. I've always been a fan.
Okay. All right. Well, I certainly related to this episode. I mean, that whole sense of like, we've got to get this thing, and then someone fucks it up, and it goes horribly wrong. But I am still watching sort of at arm's length. The show has not hooked me in, even though it's like technically dealing with subject matter that I should just buy in hook, line, and sinker. I am not there yet. Something about it is not working for me. This week, I'm blaming it on Seth Rogen. Next week, who knows? I could have found a new culprit. But I don't feel it in my gut yet. And that's just where I'm at.
All right. You down to keep watching?
Oh, yeah. We'll keep going.
All right. We'll keep going. All right. I think we've come to an end. Wow. Look at us go.
Wow.
We got through the tired ep.
Yes. It was a sleepy ep. Yes.
It was a sleepy ep.
Let's go take a nap. A couple announcements before we close out here. We are going to be, so after the Withdrawal premiere, I am going on a well-deserved vacation with my wife. I am going to try my best to not post on Instagram for 8 days. Ladies and gentlemen, this would be an incredible accomplishment for me. This is so crazy too, because like literally like 4 years ago, Sammie, I didn't post on Instagram. Like I didn't use social media at all, and now I post like 3 times a day.
What's the difference?
The difference is that I take my career seriously. The difference is that I've taken on the responsibility of I am trying to be an artist within an attention economy, and I take that seriously, and I think that requires like being front facing, in terms of your engaging with people, and then there's also wonderful benefits to it, which I have reaped this week, which is that I have met countless people who come up to me and say like, I know you from Instagram, or like, hey, we've interacted on Instagram, or hey, we've DM'd each other. Yeah. And then, oh my God, it's so great to meet you in person. This is literally like the best part of social media happening right now. And I am so grateful for that. That is amazing. It's awesome. I love that. So anyway, that's what's changed. But I am going to take this little trip to Rome, and hopefully I will resist picking up my phone. In the meantime, we have 2 amazing interview episodes for you with some amazing independent creators, independent artists. Why did I say that? Jesus Christ. We have amazing interviews with some independent artists that'll be ready for you guys. So the shows will keep coming out every Wednesday, and there's a lot to look forward to. Sammie, do you have anything that you would like to plug?
Nothing much, just more Atlanta Film Festival coverage. Like I said, I've got that interview with Sabrina Greco that's going to come out. I was excited about that. I also interviewed Kerry Washington, What is Life? That's coming out this week. Pretty exciting stuff. She was stunning and a consummate professional. It was a really great interview. And then I've got a couple of other interviews coming out as well with some other filmmakers. So those will all be on Rough Draft Atlanta. So check those out.
Yes, check out. So Sammie interviewed Madam President. You got to read it.
She's not the president. She's Olivia Pope. She's a fixer.
Doesn't she become president?
I didn't finish the series.
Oh!
I stopped when she got kidnapped, which
man.
It was just a lie. I was obsessed with that show, though.
Shub watched it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she becomes president, but I never watched it. So anyway,
I think the first lady. Anyway,
whatever. Who cares? So this has been wonderful, Sammie. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, rate, review, hit us with the 5 stars, leave a little note of kind words. It really goes a long way to helping us out. You can follow us at Crash Zoom Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. You can email us, crashzoompod@gmail.com. We'd love to know, are you as offended by Trump's blatant corruption as we are? Are you as excited about Kristen Stewart's The Chronology of Water as Sammie is? You could address both in the same email. I would love to see if you could make that segue as astutely as Sammie could, but without calling attention to it.
Yeah, give me some tips.
So we would love to hear from you. This has been wonderful, Sammie. Until next week, I will not be talking to you because I'll be on an airplane going to Rome, but I will come back and I will be happy to talk to you.
I'll be so excited about Roma. So exciting.
Yes, I'll come with a full report.
All right, see you then.
Bye.